Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us tonight on episode 2, season 3 of the Stand-Off with Brad and Richie here on New Zealand Sport Radio. We're here live every Wednesday on Facebook throughout the season. Evening, Richie. The NRL's back this week. You're looking forward to having some good footy to watch?
Yeah, hi, Brad. First of all, I'm just happy to be on here with you again tonight. I may not look it because I've been a bit unwell the past couple of days, but on the inside, I'm doing cartwheels. It's the best time of year.
Exactly. And yeah, while we're here on Wednesday evenings at 8 p.m, you can also catch our show at your convenience on iHeartRadio. Just remember to search for New Zealand Sport Radio. As always, we're going to be covering everything you need to know in the week of rugby league, including our top stories of the week, a review of the first 2 rounds of the Telstra Women's Premiership. We'll then stop and answer some questions from you, as well as some questions we have for each other. And then we'll do a preview of round 1 and make our picks for the first time this year, before ending the night with a recap of the Super League. So remember to send us comments throughout the show, and any questions, stick them through and Paul will tally them all up for us. So may as well get into the stories, Richie.
Sure, mate.
First thing was a bit of housekeeping from last week. Paul reminded us that we missed a prediction off our prediction poll. So we've spoken about it, already made our pick, but we may as well say it on here. The prediction was the first coach to be sacked, and we both went for the same guy. Do you want to say who that is, if you can remember?
Maguire,
yeah. So
the man at the helm of the Tigers.
We've added that to our list, so when we get to the end of the year, we'll know if that one's right or not before the end of the year, but it's not good to see anyone get sacked, but I think he is probably the leading candidate with the team he has right now. But first bit of news I had was something from the Sydney Morning Herald. They did a poll with club bosses of the NRL and asked them various questions. The only question that I saw that was really interesting was more than 2/3 of the people that answered the poll believe that there are teams cheating the system by using off-the-books payments for their players outside the cap. 2/3 of the clubs think that the clubs are cheating. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's quite possible. I tend to agree. You look at some clubs like the Roosters, the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs recruitment drive over the past year or two has been pretty hefty. It would be hard to argue against it, but that's just hearsay and going off speculation. But what do you reckon?
Yeah, well, it's a constant joke with us on this show about the Roosters and their $20 trillion salary cap they seem to have. I'm sure there are more than just teams like the Roosters doing shady things, but we've seen it in the past. It's not the easiest thing to prove. It's I don't know if they'll ever get to the bottom of it, to be honest.
Hang on, you're calling out 2 teams there. The Roosters, we get that, we see that, but your other one is calling out the Bulldogs. I mean,
that was all Richie, not me. I did not say anything about the Bulldogs.
That's their way of getting themselves off the foot of the ladder.
I mean, if we look at looking at the ladder. I mean, we're talking. I mean, are the actually? I've even got to take away the scrolling banner so we can see them. Are the Bulldogs the worst run team? As in, hey, they're spending twice the salary cap and they still can't win a game.
Well, they spent all the salary cap for this year, so we'll see how they go this year. There's probably more than just that though. There's a few teams. It's hard to say. Like Simon's just said, he's not surprised that anyone's cheating the salary cap. I'd say they're probably all doing something a bit dodgy. An owner of a club might have a few houses that he's not living in and the likes of. It's things like that that can get you a player across the line. If you say, we can only pay you this amount because of the cap, but there's a house in the city with a boat outside it for you,
Maybe some cryptocurrency payments.
So yeah, get those NFTs going and all that stuff. You don't know. It's a lot. It's a lot of speculation on our part there. So that's what makes it so hard. It was a bit like the Melbourne Storm all those years ago. Once that got busted open, there was all sorts of things there. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if anything happens to the Roosters.
To the Roosters. You gotta be careful with your old crypto though, because apparently the US president is going to crack down on that, as people are using it to pay Russia and get around his embargoes. So yeah, careful with your crypto, folks. It might not be as anonymous as you think in the short while.
It'll be fine. Americans don't know where we are. And yeah. And Simon's also said he doesn't think firing Maguire will help the Tigers. I don't think so either. I think it's issues with them are further up top with the two different unities that combine to make them. I think that's where all the problem is. There's a bit too much argy-bargy rather than working together. And until they figure that out, it doesn't matter if they had Wayne Bennett in there or Craig Bellamy or Trent Robertson. I think that'd still be a mess of a club. But yeah, that's it for that. We'll go off on a rabbit hole. We'll go into some Warriors news. I've got a couple that'll spread throughout. But the Warriors have named Ken Rainsfeld, sorry if I pronounced his last name wrong, as the new club chairman. He was with the Warriors a few years ago as their wrestling coach, and probably more known by a lot of people as the manager of Shane Cameron's boxing career. What are your thoughts on the announcement here, Richie?
Yeah, I heard that, Brad. I don't really have a strong opinion here or there about it. I don't know him too well in terms of, his credentials for that role. All I remember him for is saying that Shane Cameron was going to turn David Tua's lights out, and look how that ended up. Yes. So yeah, proof will be in the pudding.
Yeah,
for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I saw it and I was a bit surprised because I recognized the name on the email that it came through, and then it popped up with a picture. It was like, oh yeah, I know him. But yeah, I can, as a very successful businessman sitting here, I can tell you I have no idea what a club chairman actually does. But I'm sure the owner of the club's probably, he seems to know what he's doing in terms of running a business. He's got a very successful one himself. So I'm sure they have picked a guy that's going to fit the bill for what they need. But we'll see what happens. The last club chairman, you didn't really see a lot of what he did. He had a couple of interviews here and there, and he would come to members' events and say hello and do a little speech, and that was about it. So it's a lot of behind the background type stuff. So I'm sure it will be fine. And Simon commented about the salary cap, saying Melbourne Storm had a disgruntled accountant that reported on them. So yeah, it's things like that. We need someone at the Roosters to get upset, and then things might open up. But next bit of Warriors news, they have announced Monty Beetham, Kevin Campion, and Owen Goodenbeal returning to the club as ambassadors. I was trying to find out what ambassadors actually do for the clubs, but running basically it's means they make appearances on game days. They come to club and membership events, and they work with sponsors and in the community just to help, like, put a known face out there promoting the club as a brand. In terms of ambassadors for the club, I think they're quite good. They're all people that people look back on fondly as well. What are your take on these three being picked?
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Brad. I think they're pretty good choices for that role. I think all three of those guys are guys that were present during our sort of golden period, 2002, 2003. So, like you said, people look back on those guys fondly, and they know what the Warriors spirit's about, and what the club was about at its most successful time. So, yeah, good guys to have in that role.
Yeah, and Simon's just mentioned he's shocked to find out that the Warriors have a chairman and CEO. What's the difference between the two jobs? We could save money by having one combined job. Yeah, I think the chairman, they have like a board. Again, I'm showing all my business knowledge here. They have like a board. Yeah, let's bring the adult onto the chat. Paul.
Yeah, the adult into the room. But the CEO is day-to-day running the company, whereas the chairman is providing governance oversight and general direction and strategy, rather than actually the day-to-day running of the company.
And I suppose it's a way where you would make sure the CEO, in this case Cameron George, doesn't have over-consuming power, I guess, being putting a negative slant on it, or the positive slant that you've got more important things for him to work on to make sure the money's coming in potentially. But yeah, we've got some Warriors news coming back to black, but we'll have a little bit of a break from that and get into some other teams because there are other teams in the comp. Nathan Cleary is set to miss the first 3 rounds of the season as he continues to recover from a shoulder surgery. And Broncos players Adam Reynolds and Kobe Hetherington are going to miss round 1 due to positive COVID tests. We talked about it a bit before the show, but what's your take on, I'd say specifically Cleary and Reynolds and the impact that they're going to have not being out there on the field?
Yeah, the Cleary one, I was kind of hoping he might be ready a bit earlier. So hopefully it doesn't impact on my Dally M prediction first and foremost. That's the most important thing. I want to be correct there. Yeah, I think this first week with Panthers playing Manly, it'll be a tough one. He'll be a tough player to replace, but I think generally they'll cover him okay for the next period after that. The Broncos might feel Reynolds being out a little bit. He's, their marquee signing and their captain now. So, and they haven't travelled the best the past couple of years in the first place. So, yeah, we'll see how it pans out.
Yeah, I think the Panthers will really only feel Cleary not being there this week against Manly, but the next 2 rounds. It's that cliche, there's no such thing as an easy game in the NRL, but the next 2 rounds are relatively easy for the defending champs. Reynolds is a huge loss for the Broncos this week. I can see we both didn't pick them, spoilers for our picks. But yeah, it's only a week. They're not stuck in that same situation we talked about last week with the Raiders and Fogarty being out forever. 1 week isn't too bad, but yeah, be nice to see Cleary and that possibly miss games when they play the Warriors just to help us out. But
that would be good.
We'll see what happens. Next bit of news is nothing major, but I thought it was a bit funny. Gus Gould has come out and had a bit of a go at Buzz Rothfield. Buzz, he made some claims this week that some of the Bulldogs' new recruits were surprised by the Bulldogs' lack of technology in their preparation for the season, saying that they didn't use drones to video their trainings and whatnot. And after that was announced, Phil Gould started tweeting footage of all the drone recordings they take at training and then actually took a picture of the drone itself. It's a bit of nothing, but it's just funny in this day and age we can watch some very old men yell at each other through technology. What was your take first on Buzz's comments and then the rebuttal?
Oh, I had to have a laugh, and that's classic Gus Gould. I follow him on Twitter, and it's I saw it on Twitter. I thought it was kind of funny. And anything I hear from Buzz, I take with a grain of salt. He likes making outlandish comments.
Yeah. I've got the same viewpoint. You take everything with a huge grain of salt that he comes out with. And if there wasn't the footage from Gould, I could have seen where he was coming from. If you read between the lines when they said that some of the recruits were surprised by how different the preparation at the Bulldogs was, because you have guys like Addo Carr, and I'm pretty sure how Craig Bellamy prepares for a season would be different to how Trent Barrett does. So
absolutely.
But yeah, just a bit of a laugh to break up some of the news here. Next bit is kind of the same. Latrell Mitchell and Jacob Host got into a bit of a scuffle at a Rabbitohs training. Apparently, it was all from a fend. Latrell Mitchell fended Host, and he took it the wrong way, and they had a little bit of a scuffle. When the news broke, they were on social media having a joke about it together. So there's no bad blood there. You're a former player. How many scuffles did you have with teammates at training?
None, mate. I was possibly the cleanest player you could ever imagine. Unlike yourself. I was going to ask you about this. Did you not see the clip?
I only saw pictures.
Okay, yeah, I was going to throw it over to you and try and set you up for the first Thug Life of the year. But I did see the clip, and there was not a lot in it. It just looked like Latrell ran quite hard to the line, and yeah, he with his forearm a bit up, and it was a bit of a tackle, and then they just pushed each other. There was not a lot in it, so it was a bit of a mountain out of a molehill. Either that, or you've rubbed off on me a lot.
Yeah, I've never got into fisticuffs at a training. I had Mark's here, evening Mark.
Hey, Mark.
I have rubbed mud into the eyes of players that I didn't like in my own team, in a ruck or a maul situation and things of that nature. But yeah, never an actual fight, because you need that person with you in the weekend.
So what's this ruck or maul thing you talk about? I mean, with the NRL show, right? I mean,
yeah,
geez.
Yeah. What is that, Brad?
I'm a dual coder. I've dabbled in both.
You swing both ways.
You're South Auckland's Brad Thorne.
Yeah. Next bit of news is about Ryan Sutton. Ryan Sutton's partner has called out Ricky Stewart. I feel like this is we're going back in the time machine to like almost the same week last year. Ryan Sutton's partner's gone out on Ricky Stewart on social media for not picking him in the 17 for this Friday's match. So just said Stewart had the same type of drama last year with Joseph Tapani's partner for doing the same thing. What do you think of this? Not necessarily the situation, but the family of players having opinions on team selection and stuff. I trying to look at it, if I was that player and like my partner or someone was commenting that I should be in there, I'd be like, no, just I want to earn my way into the spot, not have my mummy fighting my battles for me, to use a term.
Yeah, 100%. But that's social media, and it gives people a platform to talk, and people use it for all sorts of different things. But I'm not a big fan of that kind of thing, and I wasn't a fan of it last year when Tapani's wife came out online, and same again this time around. Poor Ricky Stewart, he's copping the brunt of the wives and girlfriends.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think there's a lot of need for it, and probably Sutton wouldn't be too pleased with it either if he's really being honest with himself.
Yeah, I think the angle she's trying to play is that there's rumors that Sutton's on the verge of being the 30th or 40th player on the top 30 for the Bulldogs. So she's trying to say that he's leaving, so we're not going to use him. But that is an approach many clubs use. If you are going to leave the club and they have someone that can do your job the same or better, why use you? Just send you to reserve grade. How many players have sat in reserve grade for a year because they've signed to go elsewhere? It's not a first. I'm sure it won't be the last.
But is that even the case in this situation? I mean, is he not entitled to pick his own team? You know what I mean? Maybe
I looked at the Raiders team, and the Raiders team, bar the halves, which have a reason, I think the Raiders team looks fine, 1 to 17. So yeah, I don't think there's anything in it, but I thought it was an interesting thing we could discuss. Last bit of news we have, it's kind of been around for a while, but we haven't really discussed it. Chanel Harris, Tavita's manager, is shopping him around to other clubs as he looks for a deal for next season. The Warriors did offer him a deal last November, which he hasn't signed yet, but he hasn't come out saying he's not going to sign it. All the interviews I've seen with him have actually been really positive. He said he's focusing on this year, and a contract that he likes will come when it comes. He really wants to earn his spot whether it's at the Warriors or at another club. What are your takes? I put a comment in the off season about me wanting to change Chanel's position to a lock, which got a couple of people like the idea. Many people didn't. But what do you think, both on Chanel's approach and potentially where you see him in the future?
I think the approach is nothing we haven't seen before from other players, but I just wonder whether he knows something or, has got the vibe from the club, maybe through signings coming through next year, that maybe he's not in the plans as a starting player. So, it's prompted him to explore some options, but yeah, it's hard to say where you see him in the future now. Sometimes when you see something like this, there's the writing's on the wall, and maybe he's got one foot out the door already. I would love him to stay because I'm a fan of him as a player, but sometimes, like I say, where there's smoke, there's fire, and if another club comes knocking with a decent offer, he might choose to take it. I feel like we can cover it now with people like Metcalf and the likes coming, so I don't think it will do anything negative in terms of our roster, but it'd just be losing a player I'm a fan of.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of him. I think he's got a ton of potential, but I think if he wants to stay with the club, it's not going to be in the position he is now. Yeah. He would have to change position. I'm super not a fan. We'll talk about it later, but I'm not a fan of the position he's in this week. I'll be happily proven wrong, hopefully on Saturday, but I don't think that's position for him. But right now, I think the only team that would really be looking for a player like him to fill a spot is Newcastle. They're the only one that screams out right now as it is that need a half. But yeah, time will tell. It's something we'll keep an eye on, and I'm sure there'll be more news developing as the season progresses. So we'll keep our ear to the ground on it and let you guys know and give our thoughts once there's actually something set in stone. But we may as well jump straight into the Telstra Women's Premiership now. That was all the news I found.
Yep.
We haven't covered it. Obviously, it started before we were back, and then with the prediction show, I didn't want to front load it too much. So I've got the first two rounds here. Richie, did you watch any of the rounds? I'll put you on the spot.
Yeah, sure. I haven't caught all of the games, but I have caught either highlights or watched a couple of the games. One thing I will comment on is the Broncos. I've watched the Broncos play, and they've been dangerous in the past. It looks like they're the team to beat again this year. Their skill level looks amazing. They've got heaps of pace. Some of the tries they score are, really high caliber tries. And I don't know if some of the ladies have some touch footy backgrounds, but just some of the pace out of the ruck and creativeness. It looks like touch plays with the pace and the creativeness out of the ruck. Watching them play, I think they'll be very hard to beat again this year. And the Dragons, I think they're up near the top with the Broncos as well. They've got a couple really brutal, damaging players, and they're looking good also. So from what I've viewed, those two teams are looking the goods, but the quality of the games overall is really good. I was quite impressed.
Yeah, Broncos, they are the best team in Brisbane, both men and women.
Yeah, absolutely.
They have been, I think, I'll probably be corrected here, but I think the stat is they've lost one game in the history of this competition. That was against the Warriors in the first season. Yeah. And they haven't lost since. They're just too good. I can't remember her name, but the fullback for Brisbane is one of the best runners of the ball I've seen in the women game since it started. She also plays for Queensland. But yeah, it's a fantastic competition. I haven't watched it as much as I'd like. But round one, there's 6 teams now. So we get 3 games around. The Dragons defeated the Titans 20-12. The Broncos defeated the Roosters 20-4. And then the Eels won 13-12 over the Knights, getting the first field goal since the start of this competition. Round 2 saw the Broncos again 28-10 over the Knights. Titans had a strong game against the Roosters, 26-16, and then the Dragons defeated the Eels 10-0. And that brought us to this week, which has the Roosters versus Knights. Then the matchup of the round is Dragons Broncos, the only 2 undefeated teams in the comp. Then the Eels and Titans. There's a lot of Warriors flair in all the teams because the Warriors team's no longer there. So you've got a lot of the Warriors players that we've watched spread throughout the teams, which is always good. You kind of have a couple of players you recognize when you're watching. But yeah, looking at the table, you got Broncos and Dragons are first and second as those only undefeated. Titans are third, Eels fourth, Knights are fifth, and Roosters are sixth. And Paul, you were talking before the show, you wanted to throw your 2 cents in on the women's competition. So we may as well do it now while we're here.
Yeah, I just thought I'd ask because I follow a couple of sports in cycling and rugby union where the men's structure is probably not really financially viable, and also it's probably got player welfare issues, especially in the men's side. And yet the women's game just seems to be copying and reproducing the men's game from a professional level. Do you think that's the right idea of just of basically just copying the NRL for the women? I mean, it's at the same time of year. All the teams are exactly the same names. Should they have their own teams? Should it be in a different window so it doesn't compete with the men's one? Or should they be more imaginative about it? Just some thoughts there for you. I mean, should they go provincial level rather than necessarily playing sort of club level? I just want to know: are you happy with them just copying the men's structure verbatim, or should they be a bit more imaginative of how they structure the women's game since they are starting it from scratch?
For me personally, I'm happy with how they're doing it. I think it's a way to build loyalty for a club rather than going out and saying we've got the Ipswich, that place in Australia that I can't say right now. Versus, like, I was going to say Redfern, but Redfern's getting a team and the boys. But if you've got like clubs, until they build it, they're trying to, I know they're talking a lot about the building the provincial side to get more players ready for that level. I think if they had enough players to just go out there and make their own teams from scratch, that would be an interesting way to go. But as they're slowly building, they're going to be relying on the actual clubs that already exist to help build them and put the money into the game. So I think that's why they're doing it the way it is now. I see Simon's put a comment, said the only problem with the women's NRL is that it's too much of a New South Wales, Queensland competition right now. Hopefully they bring the Warriors back in and maybe Melbourne Storm women. Yeah, that's going to happen eventually. The Warriors one was strictly they couldn't play in New Zealand, and you're asking the New Zealand players that were doing, like, were mums or already had a full-time job in New Zealand that were going to Australia for the weekend to play some footy and then coming back to say, no, you've got to either quit your job or ask for a lot of leave to go live in Australia for years. So it just got too hard from a financial standpoint. And then, yeah, now that there are more of them, I think if Mark's still here, he's spent a lot of time talking to the Warriors girls, and I think there was a few of them that he has spoken to that had to quit their job so they could go and play. That's a big commitment, especially if you're a mum with a young family, which some of them were. That's why that happened. Once everything's back and you're traveling to and fro, I fully imagine the Warriors will be back in there. And Melbourne just have to open up another one of those mattresses they have full of money, and they could have a team going as well. So,
could it be a way for the NRL to, say, break into new markets such as Perth or Wellington, and start with a women's team and then add a men's team later?
No one wants to go to Perth, Paul, but Wellington for sure. I think, that was another part of the news. It sounds like the next team coming into the NRL is basically being unanimously voted to be a New Zealand team in either Wellington or Christchurch. There hasn't been a lot of news about it, but I forgot to mention it. So hopefully we'll have some more on that in the next coming weeks. But yeah,
Cool.
what was your take, Richie, on the women's team? Me and Paul just took that over.
No, that's fair. I honestly wouldn't have said anything different to you, Brad. I think you're pretty much spot on the money, and I think them with the structure they're going with the same sort of identity and team names as the men's. I think it's a good move, and a lot of the fans like it. I mean, you look at places like Brisbane where they're just diehard Broncos fans, and it gives their poor fan base actual winning team to support. So they can retain some pride in their club.
Definitely. So that brings us to our question section. Yeah. Sorry, yeah. And Simon said I was meant to say Redcliffe, not Redfern. Yeah. They're all the same to me, Simon. I'm sorry. But yeah, I meant the Redcliffe team. But were there any questions from anyone that we haven't already answered, Paul? Or should we just go straight into our questions?
No, we've kind of got taken all the comments as we've gone along.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'll ask you first, Richie.
Okay.
My question for you was, were there any surprise selections or omissions for you in the team naming Tuesday that we had last night?
No massive surprises, if I'm being honest. The biggest surprise for me, which the surprise was kind of already ruined via social media, so it wasn't such a surprise, but I don't understand fully why you would pick Harris Tavita as a fullback when we have a proven international level fullback in our team sitting on the wing who we could just move to fullback, and he's proven himself there in that position before. And we have people now who we can cover the wing spot if we move Dallin Watene-Zelezniak from wing to fullback. We've got Ratuva you could put on the wing. You could put Pompey on the wing. To me, it just seems like putting Chanel Harris-Tavita there, who's never played I don't believe he's ever played a first-grade game at fullback. It just seems a bit experimental to me.
No, he's played about 10 minutes in an All-Stars game at fullback.
Yeah,
I'm in the same boat.
Yeah.
I put that out, I think, when I was talking about the team selections on Twitter yesterday. I said Dallin out at fullback, Adam Pompey on the wing. That's how I would have had round one. Everything else, basically, in the team that they've named, I would have kept, except for that. I guess it's a positive sign that they want Chanel on the field. I don't think it's going to help him or the Warriors, but I'll be happy to sit on the show next week and say Chanel was the best player out there, Reece Hu.
Absolutely.
I really hope that is something that happens. I just don't see it. Thankfully, the Warriors are playing the Dragons.
Your other favorite team.
They really just have to make sure the bus arrives on time and the win's theirs. So, Simon's mentioned that he's supportive of having a team in Perth. Yeah, I don't mind the idea of having a team in Perth. I'm just, as long as the NRL is smart with game times that they put there, I still remember it. It's a big bugbear of mine. We played the Rabbitohs in Perth, we being the Warriors, and kickoff time in New Zealand was midnight. Things like that. They fixed that the next year round and made sure it was I think it ended up being like a 6 o'clock kickoff or something here. But that one, it was just not a good look. You got to remember that most of the New Zealand fan base is in New Zealand, so our time, the time difference for Australia to Perth is massive as well. But as long as they're smart with that, I'm all for it. But I just want an excuse to have more games in New Zealand. So a team in New Zealand's good for me. Your question for me, though, Richie.
Sure. So I just wanted to know what, in your mind, is the biggest weakness that we're carrying, from our recent history that the Warriors need to fix up to make the finals this year?
The most obvious one is there's some question marks around hooker. But I think I've gone on record, and I'll probably regret it, but I think that Wade Egan's going to have a good year this year and will prove some doubters wrong. So my biggest issue, taking that off the table, is Nathan Brown's selections, which we have just talked about. He makes questionable selections quite a few times, and I don't think he uses his interchange to the best of its ability. And it's just, I say, Nathan Brown in general, I never trust the team naming Tuesday, because the team we saw last night is probably going to be completely different on Saturday, because he seems to pick a team and then at the last minute change it all. And then when he talks in the media afterwards, he's like, oh no, we had already originally had that idea. We just, for some reason, didn't want to tell everybody. Kind of like you're trying to pull the wool over your opponent's eyes when it's almost obvious a lot of the times. A lot of it was with Reece Walsh last year. Was like, we're not going to play him. No, we are. Everyone was already knowing that he was going to play and things like that. It'll be the same if they come out at the last minute and say Dellen's at fullback, Pompey's on the wing, Chanel's on the bench or something like that, and go, well, that was the obvious choice. Why are you trying to be too cute? But that's it. I think it's just more the consistencies, and sometimes they try to stick with a player longer than they should. If you see it's not working, make the change sooner rather than later, in my opinion. But on the other side, don't chop and change the team every week. There's got to be a balance there somewhere. But I'll give him credit. I was on the show laughing and criticizing him for moving Ewan Aiken to the second row, saying, what is this guy thinking? And then in my team, I've picked Aiken as a second rower because I think he plays there better. So sometimes there's method to the madness. But yeah, that's it. I think, consistency and selections is probably the key to making sure they go the distance this year.
Cool. I'll tell you what I think. But so you're telling me that on the weekend with Tenny Zalesniak's actually going to play fullback?
I'm not saying that, but I'm not going to say that I'd be surprised that Nathan Brown makes a lot of changes.
Yeah.
Because it's what we know him for right now.
Yeah. No, I agree with what you said completely, pretty much. And also for me, I think closing out close games when we're in the hunt and we should win. I mean, we lost so many really close games last year, at least half a dozen, 4, 5, 6 games by really fine margins where we were either winning and couldn't hold on to it, or, in the hunt and just couldn't quite deliver. And had we actually delivered a result in most of those games, we would have made the top 8 fairly easily. So yeah, for me, I think it's just icing those games where we're leading and should close out, but just don't. Yeah,
I'm kind of being optimistic in saying with Sean Johnson there, that problem is fixed.
Yes, absolutely.
But I also know, as a typical Warriors fan, if he doesn't do what I'm envisioning in my head, I'm going to throw him to the curb.
Chuck him under the bus.
Warriors, I'll throw him under the bus, as I did many times in my reviews when he was with the Warriors before. But yeah, I can see that. I think a senior head in the halves should help negate that fading. All the fingers in the world crossed. But yeah, hopefully that answered the question.
Yep, thank you.
May as well get to the only part that really matters, which is our preview and our picks. As reigning normal season champion, I want to go again and go 2 in a row. But we haven't got a lot else to talk about, so we may as well go a little bit into why we're picking the teams too. Round 1, tomorrow night, we have the Panthers versus Sea Eagles. Minor Premiership. Thank you, Paul. I believe I've got to go back to my I've got my predictions here. This is actually my grand final that I predicted. Sea Eagles versus Panthers.
What's 2?
I've gone with Manly for me in this. Basically, I predicted them to be the greatest team in the world, so I kind of got to pick them in the first round. But I think the Panthers are going to miss Nathan Cleary. So yeah, I've gone with Manly.
Me too, Brad. I think you saw my picks. Maybe it was the other way around, but I think I would have chosen Panthers had Nathan Cleary been playing. But I think having your best player out at the start of the season when you're all still trying to find combinations, I think Manly might hit the ground running and take that one.
Yeah, I think I would normally be reasonably confident that the Panthers can survive without Cleary, but when you got a guy like Tommy Turbo on the other side, generally if Tommy Turbo's playing, I'm picking Manly. If Tommy was out in this game, even without Nathan Cleary, I probably would have picked the Panthers as well. So it goes both ways. So we're both going with Manly there. Next game on Friday is the Raiders versus Sharks. I've gone with the Sharks here. I've lost a lot of faith in the Raiders once they lost Fogarty. I think losing your half is a massive thing unless you're the Roosters. So I've gone with the Sharks. They've got some good players coming in that are going to help them out, and I think they're going to get the edge here. Don't think it's going to be a landslide by any means, and I hope the Raiders prove me wrong. I really want to see them do well, much as I'm sure Simon does. But yeah, I've gone with Sharks.
I've gone with Sharks as well. I think you're spot on with but I do think you're spot on with the half situation there at the Raiders with Fogarty going down. He was their half signing to really help them out in the halves. So I think they still look very thin there without him. And the Sharks have recruited really well. So, they look like they're on an upwards curve to me. So I think with the half situation at the Raiders, they might struggle like they did last year. Hopefully not quite as badly, but I don't see them getting up over the Sharks in round one.
Same. The final game on Friday night is the Broncos-Rabbitohs. Was meant to be the big clash of Reynolds facing his former club, but Reynolds isn't playing, and I think even if he was playing, I was still gonna go with the Rabbitohs. I think the Rabbitohs, they have lost Reynolds, but I think they're too strong a team to lose to the Broncos.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I'll give the Broncos a little bit more credit to start off this year because, obviously they have been pretty poor the past couple of years, but they started to piece together some performances towards the back end of last year. So, I'll give them a bit of benefit of the doubt to start the year. But in saying that, I still don't. I think without Adam Reynolds there, I don't think they'll have enough to take out the Rabbitohs.
Yeah. Definitely. So we've got the same again. Next game, first game on Saturday is Roosters Knights. I've gone with the Roosters. I think the Knights are going to struggle this year. They've lost Mitchell Pearce. The Roosters did pretty well despite me writing them off last year and saying they wouldn't make the 8. So you've got that team with that grit, plus they've got all their good players back. So, I think the Roosters with Luke Keary and Sam Walker in the halves are going to be dangerous. And they'll be a top team, so they're going to start with a win.
Yeah, I mean, two opposite ends of the ladder here for me. I mean, if going back a week to our predictions, I had the Roosters right up top and Knights as my wooden spoon prediction. So speaking to that, I think the Roosters will do this one pretty easily for the reasons you said. They've lost Mitchell Pearce. They haven't really replaced him with anybody of the same caliber. So I think this one could be a pretty big result for the Roosters.
Yeah. Next up on Saturday is the game we're both waiting for, the Warriors versus the Dragons. We just talked a bit about the selections and the team. I'm not 100% comfortable on it, but I'm still picking the Warriors here. I think the Dragons, a lot of people are confident in the Dragons, but I painted myself into a corner and picked them as my wooden spoon. And the hatred must continue, probably intensify if I get this pick wrong. But I think the Warriors have kind of had it over the Dragons the past few years, which has been completely different to their history.
Yeah.
If you go before that. So I'm confident the Warriors will want to get a win to start the season off strong and also get a win for Sean Johnson in his first game back with the club. So I've gone with Warriors here.
Nice. So did I for a couple of reasons. I don't rate the Dragons quite as badly as you do, clearly. I like you, not completely sold on, say, CHT at fullback for the Warriors. I do think the Warriors will have enough to get it done over the Dragons, though this time of year I'm always glass half full. It's our year. My hopes haven't been diced to shreds yet, so I'm very confident. I think we'll get the job done.
Yeah, last week of February, first week of March is when a Warriors fan's the most optimistic. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's where we get us at our point. The final game on Saturday is probably the hardest game of the round for me. It's the Storm versus the Tigers. The Storm have never lost in what seems like forever in the first round, but they've got one of the hardest teams in the comp in the Tigers. So I think the Storm will probably put 50 on them here, if I'm honest. I'm scared for the Tigers. Easy Storm win. So yeah, being completely facetious there, I think it was probably the easiest game to pick in the round. What have you gone with? Have you backed the Tigers? You giving them some faith?
No, the Storm don't lose in round one. The Storm just don't lose in round one, and it's the Tigers. We don't even need to discuss why. Yeah. The Storm are winning that one.
Yeah, fair enough. So first game on Sunday, Eels versus Titans. I'm hoping I get all my games right on Sunday because it's actually my birthday. So I want to be 2 from 2 on this. So I've gone with the Eels. I think the Eels have got a strong team. I think they're going to have a strong year because so many of their talent are leaving at the end of the year. So they want to leave on a high note. And the Titans, I know everyone loves the Titans with all their signings, but I'm still not sold on them long term. So yeah, I've gone with the Eels.
I went with Eels as well. I think there's a bit of a buzz around the Eels this year, and it's not just because Brad picked them. I think it might be the other way around. But I still can't get over the last round of last year where the Titans thrashed us. I don't think I'll ever tip them again after that. Even if it means I beat Brad in a tipping week, I can't stand them now. They might be my equivalent of the Dragons to Brad.
They're your Dragons.
Yeah. So no, I'm going Eels.
Yeah, that brings us to the last game, and spoilers, the only game we've picked differently, Cowboys versus Bulldogs. I've gone with the Bulldogs here. I think the Cowboys are in trouble before the season's even started. And I think while I think the Bulldogs aren't going to be the wooden spooners we've come to know them to be, I think they've recruited well. I don't see them making the 8 by any means, but I think they should. If they don't beat the Cowboys, there's something wrong with the Bulldogs. I just think the Cowboys are a mess.
Oh, I think both teams were a mess last year. I think you had the team that conceded the most points in the whole competition and the Cowboys versus the team that finished dead last in the Bulldogs. I know the Bulldogs have recruited really well, but I think it'll take a little bit of time for them to gel as a combined team. And I think preseason it showed, they got pieced up by the Sharks a little bit. So, and with the Cowboys at home, I also wanted to be different than Brad in at least one game. So this was the easiest one to sort of differ from him. I think it could be a close game, but I'll lean towards the Cowboys.
In terms of all the games, I think that one is probably the one that's on a knife edge. That if either team wins, you're not going to be overly surprised. So it's definitely not a bad choice. Simon's made his picks as well. And apart from being a biased Raiders fan, he's basically picked the same as you. So he's got the Panthers by 4, the Raiders by 8, the Rabbitohs by 6, the Roosters by 12, Warriors by 4, Storm by 14, Titans by 4, and Cowboys by 6. He's got 2 games different to me, 1 game different from you and I are 1 game apart, which we'll know in the very last game of the round. We'll know who is leading the comp. But as they say, the Premiership's not won in round 1, so there'll still be time for you to catch me. So we'll give you a chance.
I'm going to copy Simon's picks down and note them down because I bet you he beat both of us by the end of the year. There you go.
Nice. So yeah, before we go off, we will remember the Super League. Super League's already been in action. There was some.
Well, we should really get you guys on a Super Brew.
We should.
Which is what I think Simon is playing, and get
a good idea.
Inga's League ladder on the old Super Brew that everyone can join into. So
that's a good idea.
So check it. So wait for So keep an eye out on Brad's Facebook page and Twitter account. I'm sure we'll be sharing.
Yeah, I can.
When I might get a beanie. When I might get a beanie out of Brad's Brad's box of beanies.
I'm just writing his picks down now, but yeah, I can. I think we're not too late. I think we might be too late, but I can see if I can get a league set up in a tipping comp. But yeah, if not, if I am too late, we can just, if Simon wants, we can just add him to our competition and add him to the polls each week as well. So I've just wrote Simon's picks down as well to see what happens. So I'm happy to do. I'll try keep an eye on my Facebook page and see if there's a link there to enter a tipping comp. I'm already in a couple myself anyway. So, but yeah, you guys love getting me distracted. Super League. The first 4 rounds have come and gone in the Super League. St. Helens and Wigan are sitting at the top of the ladder as the only undefeated teams. New team. Simon say he's just waiting at KFC and will be official sponsor of the Penrith Panthers. Hopefully take up money out of this deal. But yeah, St. Helens and Wigan are at top of the Super League. The new team in the competition, Toulouse and Wakefield Trinity, sit at the bottom as the only teams not to record a win yet. Away from all that, legend of the Super League, Ellery Hanley, has been named head coach of the Combined Nations All-Stars, and they're going to take on England on the 18th of June as England prepare for the World Cup. So that was really all the news I found. But round 4 happened this week. We had Leeds wiping the floor with Wakefield Trinity 34-18. Catalans defeated Warrington 24-18. St. Helens wiped the floor with Hull KR 42-8. Wigan, Defiant being at the top of the ladder and Toulouse being at the bottom, they just struck through against Toulouse 29-28. Castleford defeated Hull FC 33-26, and Huddersfield defeated Salford 34-2. So it wasn't as a Wigan fan, I don't like seeing that they just scraped through there, but it's good to see that team that has just been recruited in Toulouse showing a bit of backbone in there and showing that they're not just going to be wiped off the park every week, which is what you normally see when a new team gets promoted. So that's good to see. This week coming up, they have Leeds versus Hull FC, Wakefield Trinity versus Toulouse. So at least one team is going to get their first win this week. Salford versus Hull KR, St. Helens versus Warrington, Huddersfield versus Castleford, and then Catalans versus Wigan, which is probably going to be the match of the round there. Just the current champs versus one of, well, very biased, but one of the top teams in the comp, in Wigan. Anything you want to add about Super League or anything in general before we wrap up, Richie?
I'll just throw it to you. Who gets their first win, Wakefield or Toulouse? And your unbiased pick, Catalans or Wigan?
I think Toulouse will get it. I think Wakefield's, like I just said in that, Wakefield got smashed. And Toulouse showed some spine. So I'll go with Toulouse to get the win there. And Wigan, I think Wigan will win. I know that sounds biased still, but I think they have a better team than Catalans right now. You know, Catalans, they got Mitchell Pearce, but Mitchell Pearce is no James Maloney.
Yeah.
So I'll give them the edge there. I think Wigan's been showing they've changed how they play. They're a bit more exciting. So, yeah, I'm happy to say Wigan, and then we'll see how wrong I am next week.
Yeah, we'll see you next week.
But, yeah, so that's it, unless there's anything from you, Paul.
No, we're all good.
No, you're all good. Okay, so, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in and joining us tonight on the Stand-Off with Brad and Richie. For your weekly update on rugby league, tune into our show next week at 8 p.m. here on Facebook or at your convenience on iHeartRadio. Just remember to search for New Zealand Sport Radio. Thank you again for joining me, Richie, and thanks for your help in the background, Paul. And good night, everyone.
Bye. Listen, you're ready.